Hello, everyone. We have already started recording and we are going to start now. Thank you for joining us.
Judge, I can't hear the sound.
Oh,
Why is it called an elevator?
Sorry, I checked before it was working. I may take a few seconds.
You're sharing and then optimized for video, right?
Sorry. Is it working now?
Welcome to this session where we talk.
Not yet. I can hear you just fine. But make sure when you share, and then at the bottom it says share sound, optimize for video. Tick those two things and then click share. Oh, those are shared, huh?
Sure. Could y'all hear the sound just now?
No.
It shows I'm sharing now. May I check again? Is it working now? Hi, Prof.
Welcome to this session where we talk about how to teach smart. There are two types of
Sorry, please give me a second.
Do you want to send me the link and I'll try and run it on my side?
Sure. Sorry, Prof.
Welcome to this session
Oh, there
where
we
we
go.
talk about how to pitch smart. There are two types of pitch we will cover today. One, elevator pitch. Two, how you get through that presentation to get funding. Why is it called an elevator pitch? Well, because when you are in an elevator with the person you dream of meeting, the time you take from the time you push that button to the time it arrives at your destination, that's the only window period you have. So you have got to do a compelling story so that the listener will give you an appointment to present your pitch. Hi, I'm Dr. Koh, founder of FinTech Academy. FinTech Academy incorporated in Singapore for spearheading talent development program ranging from awareness to deep dive courses. We collaborate with universities in Singapore as well as professional associations and bodies. We offer courses through IBF, MAS, as well as NTU, SUSS, and more. Our programs are conducted by industry experts with academic rigor because we believe in evidence-based practices through research. So stay tuned. Mark will take you through on how to do that elevator pitch, while Jean will take you through step by step on how you present your pitch deck.
Welcome to the Smart Pitch Workshop. My name is Mark Julian. I've been investing in technology companies for over 20 years. And today we're going to share with you some tips that we hope will be useful for you as you begin to pitch your business to potential investors. We're going to give you a number of tips that we hope that you can take away that will be useful for you. Starting with number one, telling a story. This sounds like something that wouldn't be important. People focus on the data, they focus on the facts and the figures, which are all important, but it's incredibly important at the very base of everything to be able to tell the story. Who are you? Where are you from? How did you come up with the idea? Who else is in your team? How did you meet? How did you come up with the idea? Where are you going with this? Where do you see this going in the future? Why? Tell the story. For many, this is something that they're not comfortable with, but for many, this is the difference between success and failure, being able to communicate and connect with your potential investors in a way that they truly understand. So how do you show that there's a market? At the end of the day, your business presumably solves a problem that needs to be solved and nobody else is doing what you think you need to do. You have a solution to a problem that other people have not addressed. So how big is this problem? How many people have the problem that you've identified? Can you break it down further? You've got to avoid falling into that trap of saying, we just need 1% market share, or we're going to sell 1 inch of cloth to everyone in the world, because that won't impact your investors because they're too smart for that. You've got to be very, very clear. How many people are affected by this problem? And break it down further. How do you know this number of people are affected by this problem? Quantify it in every way you can. You've got to show that this market is a certain size. You've also got to demonstrate that they have a willingness to pay for your product. If that is the way in which you're making money, of course. Many people have free trials, and that's great. But if people aren't paying for your product, that doesn't prove that you have something that can make money. So how do you show that not only people have a problem, but are actually willing to pay you to solve their problem? Number 3, you've got to keep your solution as simple as you can. There are many people who try to solve many problems with a single business idea. The problem is that people then get lost. What problem are you actually trying to solve? It's great that you have multiple uses for your product, but if you're too many things to too many people, you end up being nothing to anybody. Keep your solution simple, not only so that it has an impact on the market, but also so that your investors can understand. If it isn't clear to them how you're going to make this business work, they're not going to invest. Keep it simple. Investors are normally busy. They don't have time. They're talking to lots of different opportunities at the same time, and they need to be able to understand your problem inside of 30 seconds. We'll talk about the 30-second pitch later, but that essentially should be the ability for you to summarize your business. 30 seconds. It is this, it addresses this market, it's going to make this much money, this is how much I need. Keep it simple. The business said, this is a web platform where users can rent out their homes to host travelers who are traveling to their cities. It's going to do three things. It's going to save money for the travelers, it's going to make money for the hosts, and it's a part of this sharing culture that's taking over the world. Airbnb, right? Simple. Three things: save money, make money, share. That was it. And it worked. The fourth thing you've got to do is you've got to show the investor how you're going to make money. I know it sounds trite and simple, but too many people fail to explain exactly how they're going to make money. They get excited about numbers of users, about scaling up the platform, and all of these things are important. But how are you actually going to make money? How are you going to market your business? How are you going to get customers in the door, paying for your product? And how are you going to keep those customers? You've got to think about all those things and think about that growth model so that your investors have confidence that you know how you're going to pull money in and pay them back. Take, for example, a revenue model around pharmaceutical devices. You might, number one, partner with pharmacies. You might give away free devices to the pharmacies so that they're using them and showing customers that come in the door how to use that product, that device. You, of course, then want to sell the device, but maybe you have two types of devices, a low entry one, which is say $500, and maybe a higher entry one, which is $6,000. You have differentiation, and therefore you can upsell your higher priced products. You have then consultation. Maybe people don't know how to use your product. They need training. They need to know how they can use it. That will be your consultation fees that you make. And then, of course, you can make money from a payment gateway. Maybe there's somebody who helps you make the transaction, and you take a percentage from every single transaction on top of the money you're already making from the devices. So there are a number of ways in which you can make money just from a single device or a number of types of devices in the same category. Number 5, you've got to show that you've got traction. You've got a few problems that might evolve. Maybe you've got a lot of customers in the beginning and then they start to decline. That's never a good sign. You want to be showing a growth model. Or you could have a lumpy sales track record, and that's also not good because then there's no consistency that's coming through the door, and you can't therefore start to predict the growth that you will have in your business. So what is that traction, and how do you show that you have that traction that is for the long term and it's sustainable and it's not just based on some lucky wins? Number 6, you've got to explain why you are the right person for this business. It's great that you've already explained that there's a market, that you're going to make money, that you've got a great story. All of these things are great. But people always say they invest in the team, they don't necessarily invest in the idea. If you're the wrong team, no matter how good the idea is, you're not going to attract your investors. People are very, very concerned that you are the right person or the right team that will follow through and make this business work. You can have great people make mediocre businesses work. You can have mediocre people fail with businesses that are amazing, but they don't have the right people to execute. So why are you the right person? Or why are you the right people? What skills do you have? What experience do you have? How are you going to connect the dots around all the various pieces that you've explained on this pitch so far? You've got to explain that and show how they should invest in you and trust you to be the one to make this work. An important point here is that failure is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, failure is probably more advantageous than inexperience for sure, but probably also better in some ways, people would argue, than success. So maybe that sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes people appreciate investing in people who who have failed and know where they went wrong, can articulate where they went wrong. So explain why you're the right person doesn't necessarily mean that you've had an amazing track record. You don't have to be Elon Musk and show that you put satellites in space and landed pods back on Earth effortlessly. That is not necessary. If you failed, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So be comfortable with who you are and the journey you've already taken, and understand how that puts you in the best position to implement this idea and articulate that for your investors. Number 7, you've got to know your numbers. And it doesn't have to be complicated numbers. We're talking about the basics here. Do you know what your basic marginal costs are? And therefore, what is your marginal profit that you're making on every transaction? Are you able to work out, after you've deducted all your fixed costs and all your various operating costs, where you get to in terms of your net profit? How much are you going to be able to? It can't be. Nobody's going to invest in you. Number 8, you've got to know your competition. I've met a number of people who say, my competition is not important. And I get that. If you're Steve Jobs and you've got the most amazing product in the world, perhaps that works. But for most people, understanding your competition is valuable. You can learn a lot. You don't necessarily have to steal their ideas, but you have to understand where they excel and where you need to work harder. Understand why customers are buying your competitors' products. What is it about their products that makes them want to buy? And why do you think you can persuade those customers to move from your competitors to you? And your competitors, of course, don't have to have the same product. Remember that often competitors are substitutes. So it may not even be the same type of category of product. For example, it could be nothing. Let's say you sell baseball caps in Singapore. There's no particular reason why you need a baseball cap. So nothing is a choice. You aren't necessarily comparing yourself to competitors who sell baseball caps. You're also trying to compare to the choice of nothing. So try to assess all your competition in every form that it takes. And of course, you've got to be able to quantify and articulate your competitive advantage. What is it about your product that is better than the competition or better than doing nothing? You have to realize that people want to know, or people will buy based on clear competitive advantages. Is it faster? Is it cheaper? Does it extend your life? What is it about that product that is better than the competition? And therefore, why should I be paying for your product versus somebody else's? And can I quantify the value of going for your product versus going for somebody else's product? Finally, number 9. Remember, you are raising money from investors. So they want to know how you're going to spend that money. Do you have a spending plan? Let's say you're raising $1 million. What are you doing with that money? The investors clearly want to know how you're going to take their money and grow your business in a way that justifies that investment. Are you going to spend it on Facebook ads? Maybe that's sensible. Are you going to hire a new marketing executive? Maybe that's sensible. Maybe a new technology CTO. Whatever the need that you have, you need to be able to quantify that and explain the rationale as to why you're spending that money and how that makes sense in the context of the revenue that you're hoping to grow in the future. So I hope these tips are helpful. I hope they help to focus your minds on some simple items that you need to focus on when you're pitching your business to new investors. And maybe in summary, I can say investors will invest for a host of reasons. There will be quantitative reasons. There will also be many qualitative reasons. But they've got to feel that you're the right person based on all their data points that they're pulling in. So it's a mixture of quantitative and emotional. So that's why at the very beginning we said, you've got to tell the story. So through all these points, you've got to have thread your story so that they feel that there's a clear rationale as to why they should take their money, give it to you, because you've explained the opportunity, how you're going to spend money to grasp that opportunity, and how you're going to make money that will then return to them through shareholder dividends or through a trade sale or through some other kind of exit. So have you got that story clear? If you have, great job. All the best. Thank you very much.
Yes, you've got to tell a story that is so compelling that you have engaged your listener and that person wants to find out more. Nothing will hook investors more than a story that they can relate to. But remember, you have to be concise, coherent, and deliver it confidently with clarity. Now that you have heard from Mark on how to do your elevator pitch, we will now take you through step by step on a real case study of how we prepare our finalists for the pitch challenge to try to convince investors who were the judges. Your pitch deck will be something which Jean will take you through this workshop. Over to you, Jean.
Hello. Hi, very good afternoon to everybody. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm basically going to, now that Mark, my colleague who has actually gone over and shared with everybody the key points that you should talk about in your pitch, I'm actually going to help you understand better what a pitch deck should look like, or at least what an effective pitch deck would look like. So let's go back to the front cover, please. Right, so today, when you actually submit your pitch deck to investors, you aren't going to submit a 60-page pitch deck. So it's got to be very, very concise. And we'll go through today what goes into every slide in your pitch deck so that it's worth the investor's time to read. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Now, basically what I'm going to cover today is really reinforcing what Mark has shared with everybody. So today you're going to see that we have actually outlined what a typical or a good pitch deck would entail. First of all, you would have your cover, all right? And following that, like what Mark has said, you want to identify the problem and why the problem exists, all right? Now, after you are able to do that, you want to talk about the addressable market. The reason why you want to talk about the addressable market is so that investors know that your solution actually is needed by people. You don't want to just talk about a general market, which a lot of entrepreneurs try to do. Now, the fourth slide that you may want to go in is how you want to target your customer and who your ideal payer would be. The fifth slide that you want to cover here, and don't worry if you can't catch any of this because I will go into each of that step by step, all right? The fifth step talks about your solution. And basically, why would people pay for it, all right? So the thing is, when you get to that point, you want to make sure that you already have a very good story to convince your investors why a problem exists, why there's the need for your product, and how your product can actually make a difference and people are willing to pay for your product. Once you have that in place, you're going to see that possibly on slide number 6, that's where you present your pricing model. The pricing model is really, really important because it's going to determine how you actually calculate your financial revenues, how you calculate your projected profits, and whether the market can actually accept that. Then you move on to when you talk about the next slide, that's where you put in your forecast. Like what Mark has mentioned before, investors want to know if they can make money. So if they're going to put in $500,000 into your idea, are you able to at least earn back that principal sum that's being invested plus some kind of a profit? And how are you able to do that? So you actually would need a slide that gives a very concise 5-year revenue or profit forecast to help your investor really understand the measurable elements that go into your deck. Now, you would also talk about your outreach and your sales strategy. Just presenting a solution to your investor is not enough, because there are many founders out there who have fantastic solutions and ideas, but their business may not take off because they don't have a good outreach and sales strategy. So what investors are very interested in is actually knowing how you are eventually going to reach your potential market and how your customers will actually pay to get your product. So the mechanism of outreach and sales is a very critical part that you have to put into your slides. And moving on, you probably wrap up with your team experience, which investors are actually also very interested to look at. One slide before, please. Okay, and what's going to happen is, aside from the track record you would present, is that you would also want to present any outcomes or surveys that you have, that you've received from various pilots or different questionnaires. Now, finally, you are going to, if you want to show a demo of your product, you don't show it right at the beginning, that's what a lot of founders try to do. It actually works better if you show it towards the end, because that's where the investors understand the problem you're trying to solve, they understand the solutions you're trying to have, and then by looking at your product, they can actually connect the dots. So don't make the mistake of trying to show your product too early in the deck or too eagerly. Keep that as a carrot where they would actually stay on and view your entire deck. Now, finally, investors want to know how you're going to use the funds, how you're going to use the investment that's being raised is critical, because this is an area where investors decide whether or not their money is being used in a smart way. Now, if you're just going to use funds for paying yourselves, that probably will not appeal very much to your potential investor. However, if you're going to show that funds are being used for product development or even marketing, they would be interested. And of course, you would want to justify why you have that percentage allocated. Now, finally, you would just put in your email and contact information so that investors can get back to you if they will need further information. Okay, moving on to the next slide. I'm going to do a deep dive to each slide which I've spoken, to each point which I've spoken on earlier. Now, the first thing is you want to have a great cover slide, and many founders kind of overlook that. Having a great cover slide doesn't mean putting up the fanciest pictures or putting up a lot of information. You want to have a cover slide that has a great tagline as to what your company is doing, and that is very clean and it's very straightforward, so that the investors don't have to ask too many questions about that. So this is where you want to go. Now, on your second slide, you want to present the problems you wish to solve, and you want to kind of explain or provide the rationale why the problems exist. Okay, so just stating the problem would be more convincing if you can actually justify that with data and any kind of quantifiable information. So this is what would go onto slide 2, and keep it really simple. If you are just solving one problem, just put out one problem. All right, you don't have to write 3 or 4 other secondary problems that you think your product might solve, because that's not going to help. Just put down that specific problem that you need to solve. If you feel that your product is geared to solve 2 problems or 3 problems, you can state them as well, but don't list out 10 problems you're trying to solve. This is what Mark kind of reinforced in his presentation earlier, where founders try to solve everything, and investors actually do not want that kind of a product. They want products that solve a very specialized problem, knowing that there's a market for it. So now, speaking about market, on slide 3, this is where you would actually present the data on the real audience you can target. For example, if you are doing a startup, say in the domain of selling, healthy fruit juices. Now, the tendency is founders might just say that, people who like to drink fruit juices are from the ages of 18 to 55, and that would be our key target group. Now, that is really, really broad. What you want to do to refine your addressable market really is to kind of narrow it down and say that our healthy fruit juices are zero levels in sugar, and they'll be great for patients or for people who want to have who are dealing with diabetic issues or who are trying to lower their sugar intake. And then you will find out that your addressable market is no longer just people from 18 to 55. They'll probably be people who actually are conscious in terms of nutrition, and they probably will have also to possibly be close to where you think you might be selling your fruit juices. So this is how you really want to refine your addressable market when you present it to your presenters, to your investors, and not just have it being very generic. Moving on to the 4th slide, this is what you want to kind of put in. Here, this is how you would describe your target customer or payer. So before we were talking about addressable market. Addressable market is the scope, okay, the reach of the people that you intend to kind of market your product to. On slide 4 is where you describe the individual that is going to be purchasing your product or even benefiting from your product. Now, for those of you who are offering an education product for kids, you will find that you might think that your ideal customers are maybe children from 5 to 12, but please remember that in the case of education, businesses, the people that are really paying for educational products are the parents of the kids. So in this regard, you want to make sure that when you describe your target customer, you don't just limit yourself to the kids who are 5 to 12, but you have to include the payers for your product. And in this case, you need to describe the targeted parents of your product. So it might be parents who are maybe between the ages of 30 and 45, earning a very specific range of income, are interested in enrichment, are probably from a specific region if you are setting up a school in a location. So this is where you really got to nail and describe your customer and payer profile, keeping in mind that the user
我知道你在讲什么。
the user
那个$10.70，你是说
the user is not always the payer. Just keep that in mind. This is the same also for those of you who are doing healthcare startups. Okay. All right. Now let's look. What should slide 5 of your presentation deck include? Slide 5 is then when you present your solution, because you don't want to just start off saying that, hey, we have this solution that solves this, without getting the investor to understand what is the challenge out there and why people are not solving it yet. So don't be too eager to present your solution at the beginning, but just hold it midway when you've clearly communicated what your addressable market is, who your target payers are, and the problems that you're trying to solve. Now, when you present your solution, remember when I mentioned earlier, You don't want to just jump into just playing a demo. The worst kind of an investor deck is where entrepreneurs just put in a demo and let the demo explain the solution. That is not the right way to structure your investor's deck. You should be explaining the features of your solution. What can it solve? What are the capabilities? And how convenient or how accessible or how affordable it is. That is what you want to talk about when you present your solution. The demo is a how-to of the solution, which is different from what your solution is about. All right. Now, once you've gotten to slide 5 and the investors know that you have the solution, you would then move on to your 6th slide. So what do you show on your 6th slide? Like what I've mentioned, as well as what Mark has said, you want to make sure that people are willing to pay for your product. Now that you've told your investors what your solution is, are you able to convince your investors that people are willing to pay for the price that you are selling at? So slide 6 is where you actually put in your pricing model and where you want to try to justify that. You can try to justify your pricing model by showing how other competitors are pricing similar products, or maybe just justifying the rationale for it. Sometimes pricing models are not just straight up one-off purchases. You might be better off having a recurring subscription. You might be better off having a freemium to premium model. You might be better off having various kinds of membership priced packages. So when it comes to pricing model, it's very, very diverse, and you have to find the right one that suits your product and something that can actually keep your revenue growing. So this is where you would convince your investors that people are willing to pay for the price of the solution that you have shared. Okay, now that you would have your prices kind of rolled out, what would come in after that? Let's see what slide 7 should show. So with your pricing model in place, the next slide should be, as what we have mentioned on slide 7, is where you provide your revenue and profit forecast. Okay, this is where you can show a 5-year, a 3-year forecast. That is fine. Most investors like to know about the revenue and the profit that could be generated after the first year. So you want to show a first year forecast, which most likely you may have a deficit or you might just break even. And then you want to show the second year plus the third year where there's growth and where traction comes in. Now, this is the part where you can, be very versatile when you present your revenue and profit forecast, because you can show that, according to product line, or you can show that according to market segment and country. And basically, you can also show that according to milestones. But what I'm trying to say is that for every element that goes into your deck, try to keep them to one slide where possible. So don't have numbers running for like 3 slides or 4 slides, because the investors just don't have time to look through that. They just want numbers straight up and information straight up. Okay? All right. Let's see. Now that you are really halfway through this, the investors know about the problem, your solution, your pricing model. They're now comfortable with your forecast. They want to learn more. So what comes up on slide 8? Let's take a look. So on slide 8, this is what you want to show. This is something that's really important, which I kind of emphasized earlier. You have to tell the investors your marketing and your sales strategy. If your revenue forecast is going to show a 50% increase from the first year to the second year, you have to justify in this slide, how are you getting that 50% increase? Are you getting that 50% increase because you will be doing more marketing? Are you getting that 50% increase because you will be rolling out some kind of a referral program? Or you will be getting that 50% increase because you will be investing a lot more in social media marketing? So this is a very, very critical element where your investors are going to ask you, how are you going to jump your sales 50% from year 1 to year 2? And normally from year 3 to year 5, you might even experience a 200% jump. And if you are going to show that, if you're going to show in your revenue and your forecast that you're going to have a 200% jump, then you better have a marketing and sales strategy that can actually support that claim that you're going to make. So this is a very important slide that you want to have in your investor deck. Okay, great. Now, assuming that you've got the perfect product, you've got the right pricing, and you've got a very effective and high-performing marketing and sales strategy, what else should you tell your potential investor? Let's look at slide 9. What should slide 9 include? This is also a very critical part. Slide 9 should definitely inform your potential investors on your team's competency. And what do we mean by competency? What they are looking out for really is not necessarily how high of an education level your team members got, but really the track record. If you have a co-founder who is going to be taking up the chief marketing officer role, does this person have a track record in marketing, maybe from other companies he or she has worked with? If you're going to have a co-founder who's actually also going to be a CTO, does this person have a proven record of producing and developing technological products? So all these information about your team, and especially the founders and key people, should be on slide 9 to convince the investor that you've got the right team to execute your idea. There's a saying that goes where investors do not bet on the business, they actually bet on the people. So your team is really, really critical to the success of your fundraising process. Okay, assuming now you've got that perfect team to go with your great solution and your outstanding marketing strategy and right pricing, what comes after? Let's look at what comes in at slide number 10. So here, if you have this information, it would be a great bonus. That this slide gives you the opportunity to prove to your investors that you actually already have an in-demand product. And you prove that by actually showing some kind of surveys or pilots that you have done and the outcomes for that. Investors normally like to invest in businesses that have done some kind of a market research and are able to quantify their addressable market. So if you are able to actually do some kind of a pilot rollout with even a minimum viable product and you've gotten great results, you should definitely put it in this slide. All right. Now, if you've done something and the outcomes are not exactly what you're looking for, you can do another survey again until you reach a very, convincing number that you're looking for or a very convincing outcome that you want before putting it into your deck. So this slide 10, would be your so-called bonus slide if you actually have pilots that you can show to your investors. Now, let's look at slide 11. We're actually coming to a close as to how a pitch deck should look like. On slide 11, this is where you show your product demo. So once the investors is convinced that you have a great solution, great strategy, very convinced by your surveys, at this point, they would be very interested to look at your product. Now, this is when you actually pull up your demo. So this comes in actually towards the end of your presentation. Your demo can actually be a video embedded, or you can just have a link that links to something else. Okay, now the last two slides. Let's look what goes into slide 12. On slide 12, finally, this is where you try to take the order. The order is you want to get your investors to invest in your business, and they want to know how you're going to use the funds they put in. So now that you've already presented your pricing model, you've shown your projected revenues and forecast, you've shown market appetite. Investors are keen to know what's going to happen to the $1 million they give you, to the $2 million they give you, or even the $50,000 they give you. How can their money become smart money when it reaches your company? How are you going to use the funds to be able to achieve what you want to achieve? So normally, people would want to explain the use of funds in the form of a table or a chart, or something that is easy for investors to look and understand straight away. So this part should just be very, very technical and very straightforward and very, very clear. So finally, you definitely don't want to miss out on putting your contact information, which can come on slide 13. Okay, because you want to be reachable and you want to make sure your investor doesn't just take that deck and discover they don't know how to reach back out to you. So you want to put in your email or your email or your phone number or even WhatsApp. That's fine. Just have that in there. Okay, to wrap up, let me just give you some more final tips on really how to pitch smarter. Number one, always quantify where possible. Even when you are trying to explain something that tends to be descriptive, why does this problem exist? Quantify it with numbers. It exists because 90% of the people, in the region of Southeast Asia has no access. This is quantification. Put in numbers where you can. Number two, if you set a target, justify how you will achieve it. So if your solution says that it's able to include more people in the process, or it's going to make calendaring much easier, you have to explain how it's going to work and try to quantify it as well. So for example, instead of saying that this mobile app will be able to reach a large pool of people, you want to say that the mobile app can reach 1 million people. And 1 million people will be able to download the app in 3 seconds and actually use the app right away. By the time they finish the order, it's just going to take them a quick 10 seconds. So this is how you set your targets and how you quantify each phase. Now, for those of you who are not simply just emailing a pitch deck but actually going on stage to do your presentation, or even just doing an elevator pitch, you always want to write and rewrite your script until it fits the timeline for each slide. So you got to remember, for those of you who are actually going to be pitching on stage, there is always a short time of not more than 5 minutes. If you have 10 slides, you got to make sure that everything you want to say fits into that 5 minutes, and you don't overrun and you don't miss out on any slide. And the only way to do that is to really write your script and rewrite it until you're so good and so familiar and it fits exactly. If slide 1 only needs to be 10 seconds, make sure your script is designed for 10 seconds. If you need 30 seconds to explain slide 4, make sure that you just talk for 30 seconds and not 40 seconds. Great. Now, number 4, you want to make a list of potential questions and prepare your answers in case you are asked. Normally, when you present this on stage or even at a meeting, investors meeting, they will come back with questions. So in that regard, you have to make sure that whatever you cannot cover in your investor's deck, you actually can respond when it comes to Q&A. So I hope these 4 tips will help you pitch smarter, in addition to the slide-by-slide sequencing that you should have in order to have a very effective pitch deck and pitch better. So having that said, thank you so much for your time, and definitely look forward to the Q&A coming up right now.
Excellent presentation. Thank you, Jean. Thank you for taking us through all these tips, the $1 million tips. So we have had Julian, who gave us the elevator pitch, and now we have Jean to do the details. Now it's open to the floor, and we have one more speaker that is joining us, and he's none other than Douglas Gunn. And Douglas, together with Mark, are experienced VCs, right? So run to them for funding. We have a first question. The first question is, how do we address the point on team experience when a startup is just only 2? A founder and a co-founder? How will investors be convinced that this is doable, this is investable? So we have this question from A.
Okay, let me just take that really quick. I believe Mark and Douglas will have things to add. Now, if your co-founders are only 2 people, don't forget, you can always invite experts to be your advisors. You can always invite experts to be on your board. So that is what goes into your team. If you don't have a management team, try to put in advisors and try to put in board of directors. So that would be my tip for that.
There you go, standing on the shoulders of giants and having good-hearted people, shared vision with you, being there for you. Mentors do a lot of great deals for you guys. Mark?
Thanks, Dr. Ko. I would say there's no hard and fast rule. There's no one size fits all. The fact that you have 2 people in your founding team doesn't necessarily mean that you are not eligible to raise funding. There are many ways of looking at these things. Maybe you've already got a track record and you've already started making a lot of money already. Maybe you're outsourcing a lot of your operations. So you maybe have 2 people in your team, but you've outsourced some of the critical functions to other organizations. It could also be that you're not raising very much money. Maybe you're only looking for $100,000 or $200,000. And in which case, what you 2 have done is already more than enough to justify a seed capital investment. Of course, if you're looking to raise kind of 100 million sort of pre-IPO based on 2 people and no revenue, then people are going to ask questions. But that would be my main takeaway: is think about what your audience will say. Put yourself in their shoes. If you had to give the money that you're asking for, what would you look for in the team that you're investing in? For that amount of money, does it feel that you have ticked all the boxes? Do you have a track record? Do you have a number of people, I'm sorry about the noise. Have you got track record already? I'll hand over to Darren, given the noise.
Douglas, will you put your money if it is only 2 founders?
Yeah, of course. I mean, depends on what the 2 founders' experience are, and depends on what they're trying to do. Yeah. So, for example, if one of them is tech genius and the other guy is a business dude, and then the 2 of them are trying to develop maybe a small project for a particular sector, very niche for a start. Yeah, I could invest in that, and then if they can demonstrate to me and show that they have a lot of drive and they have a lot of grit to make sure that no matter what happens, they'll still continue. Yeah.
Indeed. Thanks, Douglas. And his grit is G-R-I-T. Don't run away thinking otherwise. All right. That G-R-I-T is a very important attribute that we look out for when we are choosing teams, right? Choosing where to put money. Okay, one last question. Time is running out. This is your opportunity to get the questions from our very experienced panel here. Anyone? You can, actually, you can just turn on your video and we can see all of you rather than just see 5 of us. Come on, turn on all your videos. And then we will spot you. And one fine day when you come and say, Douglas, would you give me $1 million? You say, I saw you somewhere. Okay, good. I see Ichu turning on. Who else? Come on, everybody, turn on your videos so that we know who we're talking to. Okay. Yeah, okay, more coming on. Come on. And we're going to take a group photo, huh? Ron, you said that Jean has very good suggestions. But of course, do we get to see you? Yeah, good. I see Jimmy. I see Edward. Who else? Come on, come on. Yeah, good. Don't worry if you are in t-shirts and shorts. Working from home is like that. Okay, can we have more questions? Anyone? This is a rare opportunity that we get Jean, Mark, and Douglas all at the same time. Ask your last question and then we can have a group photo. No questions?
Yeah, let me how much money should you ask for? Right? That's something that a lot of founders kind of want to know. If you're, especially if you're a startup, you're a seed, what is the correct amount of money? Should you just go in and ask for 5 million right away? You know what? I'll let Mark and Douglas answer that. How much money is the right amount of money?
Let me try and give a quick response to that. Again, there's no hard and fast rules. There are no one size fits all answers to these questions. But I think the amount of money you're asking for should be very clearly tied to what you will use the money to achieve and what the expected returns or benefit will be as a result of asking for that amount of money or using that amount of money. If all you need is to prove a concept, then perhaps you only need $10,000 or $50,000. But perhaps you've got some other ongoing expenses, or you want to give yourself some runway to allow yourself to raise money at the next phase. So really the amount of money should be very clearly linked to what you will use money for. You need a little bit of buffer, of course, so you're not desperate when you're raising money again. Assuming you are, you may actually just be getting straight to profitability. But whatever you're asking for, be very clear. This is what I will use it for. We need to hire these 5 people. We need to spend this money on marketing. We need to buy this asset. Whatever it is that you're looking for, make sure that that is clearly documented and clearly communicated to your investors. And that should be the amount of money plus a buffer.
There you go. Okay, time's up. Time flies. All right, we only have 2 minutes. Let's turn on our video and we can take a group shot. Darren, are you ready?
Okay, ready?
Yes, I love to see that smile, Lichu. Angeline too. Okay, who else? Okay.
Can
Are we
one.
waiting for 1 more? 2 more? Ron, I don't see your photo. You ask so many questions and I don't see you. You participated so actively and yet I don't see you. Ron? Lauren? Shy Singaporeans? Okay, let's take a picture. Thumbs up for Jean, Mark, and Douglas.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. We'll stay in touch. See you tomorrow for the digital banking by our very own Chief FinTech Officer from MAS. So see you tomorrow morning. And on Friday, we will see you in the afternoon. All right. Cheers. Have a good evening. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.